If you've been jumping into exams without learning the basics first properly, I'd say start now by building the foundation first. I recommend a 5-pronged approach to LSAT studying. I call it the laser approach, which is, and I'll type in the chat here, learning, accuracy, sections, exams, and review. So learning, accuracy, sections, exams, and review. Learning is theory, reading textbooks, doing drills, learning questions by type, building your foundation, just learning the basics. What's ordering games? What are grouping games? What are flaw questions? What are parallel questions? Reading the theory, and maybe doing some drills. Accuracy is the next stage, which involves doing questions untimed by type, just in a row, using spreadsheets and categorizations to break them down bit by bit, rather than doing random sections and random spreads of questions, doing 50 strength questions in a row, 50 weekend in a row, a dozen ordering games in a row, a dozen grouping games in a row. Next is sections, doing individual timed 35-minute sections to work on your pacing. This is also a great thing to do when you're working or in school and you only have a half hour or an hour here or there and not enough time to do a full-length timed exam. Next is exams, which are where you build your endurance, doing full-length timed 5-section exams, which will take you about 3 hours or 3 hours and 15 minutes or so, including the break. This is well worth doing, at least ideally 10 of them before test day, assuming that your timeline allows for that. If you're taking the exam in a week, you do not have time to do 10 exams between now and then, not even 5 exams. I would not do an exam a day. I would not do exams on consecutive days, at most every other day, and ideally no more than 2 in a week. So if you're taking it in the fall, you have plenty of time to do 10 timed exams spaced out. Even just doing 1 a week would be great, along with detailed review and looking at weak areas as well, maybe doing some drilling, some sections here and there. And it's really important that your timed exams properly simulate test day conditions, meaning that you don't pause the clock to go to the bathroom, you don't take breaks that are off the clock, you don't chat with a friend, you don't check your phone, you don't check your email, you don't go for a walk, you don't go to the refrigerator. You ideally even have your gallon-sized Ziploc bag with your sharpened yellow number 2 pencils and your rubber rectangular eraser and your water bottle, your energy bar, your banana, your analog watch. That's it. You don't have your phone around. You don't have your friends around. You don't have your computer nearby. That's all you've got. And of course, you're using a tablet for the digital simulation. That's one thing, but there's no need to have your email open at the same time. And of course, if you are lax with yourself on any of these things, then your score may be inflated and you could be in for disappointment on test day when your score comes back 3 to 5 points lower than you were expecting because you were cushioning yourself by giving yourself these little extra minutes here and there. And of course, if you're doing paper, by the way, use your bubble sheet, use your Scantron to simulate the time that takes. Last step is review, which I talked about a little bit before, but I'll repeat it just to be clear. The review process involves analyzing where your misunderstanding came from. Was it in the stimulus or the passage or the game setup? Was it in the question stem? Or was it in the answer choices? A lot of times folks will confuse necessary assumption for sufficient assumption, for example, or they will misidentify the conclusion. Sometimes an argument has a evidence, subconclusion, and main conclusion, and the subconclusion might include the word thus, but the main conclusion does not. Very tricky. So make sure that you properly identified the structure of the argument. If your misunderstanding was in the answer choices, you want to see what was tempting about the wrong answer that made you pick it, and what ultimately makes it wrong, and what was discouraging about the right answer that pushed you away from it, and what ultimately makes it correct. You want to do this again and again and again for everything you get wrong, everything you have difficulty with. Write this out. Write it out by hand, type it out, post it online, get feedback from others. You could even talk it out with a friend in a study group, talk it out with a tutor or an instructor. Whatever you do, at least articulate it in some way, because it's too easy if you're just doing it in your head, to gloss over your mistakes, gloss over your misunderstandings, look at the answer key or look at explanations and use them as a crutch and say, oh yeah, I get it now, and move on. That is not enough. It's really important to really articulate for yourself where your misunderstanding was so that you can avoid making the same mistakes in the future, because the LSAT has like 1,000 different tricks in their bag they could pull out, and you're not falling for all 1,000 of those tricks, or else you'd be getting a 120. So you're doing better than that presumably, meaning that you're only falling for certain tricks. But because the LSAT keeps repeating itself, if you fall for a mistake or a trick now, you will likely fall for it again in the future when it comes up again, because we're only human. Our logic is not impeccable. We are fallible. And so you've really got to force yourself to figure out where your mistake came from so that you can avoid making it in the future. They really do dress things up differently in the future. It might be in the context of heart disease or climate change this time, and next time it could be about car crashes and dinosaur extinction. So it is important that you see the underlying logic within a question and don't get too wrapped up in the topic, but see, was this an ad hominem flaw? Was it correlation causation? Was it necessary sufficient confusion? Was it any one of a number of other things that could come up? And so I just say, ultimately, this analysis is really important. Don't gloss over it. The proper review of a single exam should take a couple of hours at least. If you're reviewing, let's say, the 10 or 15 that you got wrong, plus the 10 or 15 that you guessed on and got lucky, or you weren't totally sure on. Of course, like I said, these things do repeat themselves. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.